it's the day in and day out of getting better every single day that actually puts you in a position where people, even if you are playing a quirky character, are even going to care about that quirky character. So, like I know that it can be really easy nowadays to get lost in, thinking that you need to be that thing, but really what matters is how good you are and how good of fights you put on. And, or at least for me, I said a long time ago, I'm putting all my eggs in the basket of being good and winning. And so that's just, I'm still in that mindset of that's the way that I want to do it.
Snake Takes. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Suga Snake's Takes. I am Jake the Snake. You can see my man Rashad Evans, known as Suga. We got a really special guest today. The Sandman is joining us. So I've gotten to know Cory here the last couple years. It's pretty sweet to have dived into knowing the UFC guys because, on the mat, in the ring, in the octagon, they're badass mofos. But out in life, they bring a lot more than you think than just being a badass mother that can whoop your ass. And this is one of those guys who's very philosophical, loves to get outdoors. He's got a big fight coming up August 3rd in Abu Dhabi, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But without anything else said, I want to introduce to Suga Snake's Takes Cory Sandhagen. What's going on, man?
Yo, what's up, guys? How are you guys? Thanks for having me on. Nice to see you again, Jake. Rashad,
Yeah.
I know you're really far away, but I see Jake kind of semi-frequently.
It's good to see you too, man. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of years. A lot has gone on in your life. Some big fights and injuries, got married, got a new home. We can dive into whatever comes up. But, right now I'm just interested in what are you up to right now? As you got, it's middle of May. What's your days like as we're sitting here figuring out what's going on?
Yeah, so my last few weeks of life have just been trying to figure out what date it is that I'm going to be fighting on. So I've been doing a lot of just sitting around waiting on that. And then last week or about a week and a half ago, they told me that I was fighting August 3rd. So I kind of tailored down training a little bit so that I wasn't going to be smoked going into a camp. So now I'm in camp, and yesterday was Monday, and today is Tuesday, and I'm already like beat to shit waking up this morning, and it's gonna take me a couple weeks to get used to the battering again. But yeah, I'm really excited, dude. Like I haven't obviously been in a camp for about a year now, and that's kind of what my life revolves around is pushing forward in the UFC. So it's kind of been not the most fun sitting out, but I'm really excited that I'm back in the game now.
So I know Rashad knows what you're talking about, but take me, like, camp to me is like we're there all day long. It's 2-a-days. You got like fill me in a little bit about what you mean by going into camp.
So camp is a 12-week long process for me. Some guys do it's somewhere usually between 8 and 12 weeks for most guys. A lot of my fights have been 5 rounds in the last couple of years, so I've been doing 12 weeks for those ones. It's about 2 to 3 practices a day if you count like strength and conditioning. So it's like 2 like skills practices and then 1 like strength and conditioning session a few days a week. And yeah, it's like sparring 2 times a week is pretty much like getting hit by a car 2 times a week. So that's really not the most enjoyable piece of the whole thing, but it's really fun. And like the thing that I enjoy most is just like watching myself improve. Like that's a really enjoyable process for me. But the diet kind of picks up a little bit. 12 weeks is kind of a long ways away to be super strict on my diet, but around 8 or 9 weeks I'll have to really start losing some weight here. I'm probably around 160 right now, and I got to make it down to 135. So
Ooh, wow.
I try to be. Yeah, but that's kind of like an unreal number. So I really only have to lose about 10 pounds until the week before. And then in that last week, I lose the 15, which is just water and, all of that stuff that's in you. So So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. It's like just a lot of skills building, a lot of conditioning, a lot of sparring to get, it just makes you feel like you got hit by a car every day. So yeah, that's about it. It's fun right now, but it's gonna suck in about 3 or 4 weeks. I won't have so much pep in my step, but right now it's fun.
So Cory, you talked about beforehand. You said you got to kind of taper off before you go into camp. What have you been doing this whole time that you've been out of a fight, just waiting for camp to start?
Well, I still been spending like a decent amount of time at the gym. Really, like I'm really involved with a lot of the amateur guys at the gym too, and lower level professionals. So I help a lot of those guys a pretty decent amount of the year too, even when I'm outside of training camp and all of that stuff. I guess
Yeah.
if you like really, really backtrack all the way to when I actually got hurt and the actual injury piece, because I tore my tricep in the last fight. Um, it was about like 6 to 8 weeks that I couldn't really use that arm. So I kind of was just having to spend my time doing other things. I
Mm.
read a decent amount of books. I like, uh, I like writing little short stories sometimes. I like studying film and just reading books, man. I don't really do a ton, to be honest with you. That's I'm just kind of I have like a fascination with people and life, and that's like just what I spend my time doing outside of. So
Now, speaking of fascination of people, you said something very interesting, and I don't hear a lot of fighters um, really talk about how they give back to the community in the sense where you're feeding the next up and coming generation and you're helping that young talent out make it to the next level and having you in their corner. I know it emboldens them with a lot of positivity and a lot of hope because you're at the top of the pinnacle. But what's your mindset, helping those guys out?
well, I think it's just kind of the culture of MMA, I would say, or at least it is for me. I know that I got a ton of free help for a really long time, and without those people that just generously gave all their time to me, I definitely would not be where I am. And I think that once you become successful, I think that most people that become successful really care to give back to the people that they like or they enjoy being around or they see part of themselves in them and they want to give back to those people. And that's mostly where that stems from. I also have this thing where if you're my buddy, this is why I don't have a lot of friends, but if you're my buddy, I really like helping you out. Like I'll go all the way to help you out. And I have a few guys on the team that are my buddies, and I consider them like close friends. And so for me to not help when I know that I can, that just feels kind of like the wrong thing to do. So.
I feel that.
You when I first was hanging out with you a little bit, it was pretty impressive to watch you work with just one hand when you had your arm in a sling as you were recovering from your injury. What was that process like for you? Um, what did you do as far as, I know you use a lot of different techniques and you're a very deep thinker. Did you use some visualization? What else did you do to get yourself back? I mean, because one thing is you're trying to get better, but you're also trying to get back. And the tricep is not it's a very important muscle for you and what you're doing in fighting. So take us through that rehab process and some of the things you use to get back healthy and ready to go again.
Yeah, it was just, I guess, like the typical stuff, like seeing the PT guy and then seeing like my other therapist that I go and see to work on my body and stuff. But yeah, it honestly, I mean, it kind of flew by, man. Even as I was in it, it kind of flew by. I kind of, it's better to have one arm and two legs than it is to have one leg and two arms. So I was still able to do a ton of stuff still, like work on my footwork, work on some of the kick attacks that I want to work. And then just understand the game more deep through like working with my coaches and just asking questions and watching a lot. I also a really interesting thing that I got to do in a lot of this time off is I went to a ton of the UFC shows to be like to just do like guest appearances, like fan meet and greets and all of that stuff. And that was really interesting because I think it was the first time in the entire time I've been doing this sport that I really understood like the spectacle piece to it. Like for me, that's a really hard thing to wrap my mind around. Like I just don't see things like that Marley, go away. Sorry. I don't really see things like I definitely don't see fighting in terms of entertainment. I see it as this thing that helped me get through a lot of hard pieces of my life, and I see it as like my passion, and I see it as this like very like ritual, spiritual thing. Like each camp is its own crucible where I get to learn more and more about myself and life and all of that stuff. So for me, like seeing like the lights and the cameras and the famous people that are there, and then all of the just the whole spectacle to fight in the UFC was really interesting, and it was good for me to wrap my head around that because that's also reality to a certain extent too. So I had to kind of just realize that that's a big portion of this and just wrap my head around it. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, you know, Cory, one thing I like about you as a competitor is the fact that you don't buy into the whole I gotta fight this guy because he's ranked. You don't play the whole politics game of who you should fight. You face it like how we used to face it back in the day before there was any rankings. Like no matter how you stack it, I'm gonna have to fight everybody anyways if I'm saying I'm the best, right? And you have that mindset. Um, Talk about how your journey to become getting to where you are right now as a UFC fighter and everything you went through in the past, and kind of like bring that into like the why you fight. Like why do we see this stoic killer that can be smiling 1 minute, but then the next minute be okay with just ripping off your head?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up like me as a kid. I was very quiet. Like I didn't talk. I don't think until I was about like I mean, I would talk to my friends, but in group settings, I just wouldn't talk until I was maybe like 21, 22 years old, just because I do like enjoy listening to people talk. I like seeing how social dynamics happen, and just I prefer to listen to people and like get something from it than like voice my opinion that I'm probably going to have changed in a couple years anyways. So I was always kind of like that, but also I was also so my dad was a postal inspector, and he was kind of neurotic about getting in trouble. So I wasn't really like a troublemaker kid. I just was scared to death to get into trouble because my dad had convinced me that it was going to be like the end of the world if I ever got in any trouble like that. So I had that also paired with this like quiet personality, and then like this like tough, angry, like very competitive kid all mixed together, which was a very it's just a very weird mix of things to be. Um, and I got a lot of my stuff out of me just by playing sports. And that was almost all of my focus growing up. Like, yeah, I grew up playing basketball, which I know is not that normal, but that's because my mom wouldn't let me wrestle because she didn't want me wearing a singlet in front of people. Uh, so I did all of that growing up. I was that way. MMA worked for me really well because it did require like a really high level of dedication, which I definitely had. Both of my parents were really hard workers growing up, and I'm kind of like that also. Like I remember playing basketball like in the winter time when we couldn't go out and shoot like on the hoop that we had outside. I would be in the garage dribbling, like doing dribbling drills at like the age of like 12, 13, 14. So that has kind of just been the way that I've operated for a really long time. A lot of my heroes too, like Kobe and like a lot of these people that I would read autobiographies on and biographies on were people that I really looked up to, and those were like the competitive people that I strived to be like when I was younger also. So I think MMA worked for me because I had this high level of dedication. I was really willing to follow all of the rules just because I was scared to like break rules back then. Which there's like a that made me really coachable too. It made me realize that like other people are smarter than me, so I should just shut up and listen. And then the last thing, just like being a little bit of like a pissed off tough kid, like that just made it so that I could participate in something so rough. So yeah, I know that that was a little long winded, but yeah, that I think that that's why I'm where I am.
Nah, that's a great answer. You know, I just see you as just this, you know, mentally speaking. Like I see a lot of athletes, and I was even one from time to time. I would you know, as you know, sometimes as you get closer to the fight, mentally speaking, the fight can get away from you. You know, I've seen fighters lose fights just because mentally they didn't prepare themselves. What's your mental preparation, the hardening process from going to that, I'm in training camp mode to now I'm 2 weeks out from the fight and now the season in me is changing a little bit. What's that process like for you?
Yeah, sure. So, actually, this was a discussion that I just recently got into that I kind of got to understand a little bit deeper. But I'm really big on like the Zen way of life, like the like trying to be present every day way of life, the not thinking too far into the future. Like I'm that way of life works for me. Um, and I think of Zen and the being present piece, which can be practiced at all times. It doesn't just need to be in the gym. It can be practiced outside in life, is actually more important in those times anyways. But I see that as like the soil of performance. Like I see it as like the very baseboard that you get to build all of these really awesome performances off of. And I think that that's a really important thing to note, because I know that people see me as like a guy that paces back and forth in the ring and looks really upset and fights with like a very aggressive style, you know? So just being, I know that that's what people see, but really on the soil of that is just being present, being Zen, making sure that any thought that goes into my head is a helpful one and not an unhelpful one, and the unhelpful thoughts just get asked to leave. And that's a big piece of, I think, building a good performer or building a good performance for yourself, is laying that groundwork of making yourself peaceful so that when it is time to, be a competitive guy and to have that competitive fire, you can have that flower bloom out of that soil, because you're so in control of yourself and all of the stressors and all of the things that come with fighting that can really mess with you, like you were saying.
Mm. Is it something you write down, or is it just kind of something you just kind of mentally do, and you just kind of check those boxes mentally when you start feeling those feelings come up, those red flag feelings where you get a little bit nervous, more nervous than you should?
Yeah, there's definitely things that I do when I can't like kick the feeling. Most of the time, though, so I guess I've been practicing meditation for a decent amount of time now, but I don't like formally do it as much anymore. I should probably get back to it a little bit, but I try to live like the lifestyle of meditation, which just kind of, in my opinion, is just, or at least in my like definition of, and like I said, opinions change all the time, but is just allowing helpful thoughts and not allowing the unhelpful ones, throughout the day. So I try to live that way. I do my best to do that. It gets hard when my body gets really tired, because then my mind kicks in a little bit more. But I do like actual practical things too. I do a decent amount of journaling. I do a decent amount of organizing my notes so that I'm really organized. I do really well in an environment where I know what's going on and I know like the solutions to the problems. Even if I don't get to solve them immediately, at least I have solutions to them in the future. So I write a lot of those things down. I do visualizations like twice a week when I'm in camp. And that's just like skills building for me, so that helps. I do a decent amount of hypnosis stuff on YouTube, not formal ones with someone, because that sounds really expensive, but I'll do ones online. I'll do ones online that I really enjoy doing, because sometimes the things that are, like lying way underneath the surface need their time to come out and speak to you. So that's kind of the way that I've figured out works for me to, figure out those deep, deep things, so that when you're in the back getting ready to go out for a fight, those things don't get to sneak up on you and scare you at the last minute.
I, I find it real interesting hearing you speak in such, I've gotten to know you a little bit, spend time with you, and understand now more about the person you are. But in today's world of this high profile, like you said, the scene, you've been to the scene, you watched the fights going on and got to see from the perspective of a fan. And now, you're like today's athlete. What's today's athlete really like? Is there a true representation of, hey, this is Cory on the mat and off, or are you a whole different person? Like I felt like when I played, I was I'm way different than I was when I was playing ball. People know me as Jake the Snake still, but not really. I'm way past that, and I've moved on. Yet that's still such a defining part of my life, and it really can lead to assumptions of what people think. Like right away, here's two fighters I'm looking at on the screen, Rashad and Cory. You're badass mofos I better not mess with. But I know you both, and you're not. You're like zen. You're peaceful. You're really thoughtful. You're very introspective and very observant. So what is today's modern athlete? Like you're getting ready to go to this huge fight. People see you, but they don't really get a real representation. How do you go about the kind of that juxtaposition of being one person in the eyes of a whole bunch of your fans, but also a completely different person at home with your wife and your dog?
Yeah, well, I suppose I take the path of trying to just stick with who I am and just highlight the things that I feel like I am instead of playing a whole nother character. I think MMA is a really unique sport in the sense that it's entertainment meets sport, and the other sports you sign a contract because you're worth X amount of money because you score X amount of points, and I think that in MMA it isn't always that way. Just one because of the layout, but two just because it is entertainment mixed. So navigating that for a really long time was actually pretty tough for a guy like me, just because I didn't know how to brand myself because I was like, that's stupid. I don't feel like I have an identity to latch onto that I even really feel like pushing. Um, so I've kind of just realized that I'm just not that guy. So I'm just going to be normal guy who I feel like is really obsessed with his craft. And one thing that I do, like one way that I feel like I've just tried to be like the modern day athlete, which in MMA I think means getting a decent amount of fan base around you, is just trying to help people understand the sport a lot better than they do currently. And one, I want to do that because I think that the sport is really beautiful outside of just the violence that happens. And two, I think that it's just helpful in people understanding the fighters a lot better and that they're not just a bunch of dumb guys that fight like apes inside the cage. A lot of these guys are really smart, really sharp guys. Like I haven't met too many. Well, actually, I have met a decent amount of silly ones, but the really good ones are usually not too silly. They're very in touch with themselves. They're very in touch with sport. They're really smart guys, man. And so I want to highlight that in people. I also just being a little bit of a rebellious guy growing up. I don't really like fitting any mold. I like kind of just being who I am, and uh, I don't think that there's a ton of fighters in the UFC that are just labeled normal guy who did it, and that's kind of who I want to be because that's who I am.
Yeah, I think you do a really good job of kind of branding yourself in that nature and really just branding the other aspects of just your personality and you being that professional athlete who's there to sign on the dotted line no matter what. I feel like that's your calling card, and I feel like that's a calling card that resonates with a lot of people with the convolution of this sport becoming such an entertainment business that sometimes the entertainment part trumps the fight part. And you see fighters kind of get lost in that. Sometimes it works out for the better, but when it's not a natural thing, you tend to see these guys who are acting the part kind of burned out in a sense, just because they're so far out of themselves on a character level, trying to entertain that it doesn't transfer over in the whole fight thing. And it's good that you navigate that really well because it's a very difficult thing to do, especially when your bottom line counts on how many fans are tuning in to watch you.
Yeah, definitely. I would also say too to any of the fighters that are listening as well. Um, it's like winning is the most important piece. Like you can play whatever character you want to play, but if you're not winning, like you're not going to make the money that you think you're going to make and you're not going to have the success that you think you're going to have success. It's like it's the day in and day out of getting better every single day that actually puts you in a position where people, even if you are playing a quirky character, are even going to care about that quirky character. So, like I know that it can be really easy nowadays to get lost in, thinking that you need to be that thing, but really what matters is how good you are and how good of fights you put on. And or at least for me, I said a long time ago, I'm putting all my eggs in the basket of being good and winning. And so that's just, I'm still in that mindset of that's the way that I want to do it.
Absolutely. Looking at your weight class, I mean, your weight class is, fastly has become one of the most entertaining, one of the most talent rich, just an embarrassment of riches when it comes to just the talent pool of fighters in that weight class. One, what's your take on the weight class now, and two, what do you think about the champ and Marab fighting?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the first question, how the weight class is now. I think that a lot of the cream is starting to rise to the top. For like when I think about the division, maybe a year to 3 years ago, there was like a ton of talent. Like you had kind of like a mix of new guys with the mix of the guys that are like kind of been around for a little bit, like the Cejudo, the Dominic Cruzes, even TJ Dillashaw was in the mix there for a little bit. You had all of those really big, accomplished names fighting a lot of these upcoming guys like myself, Petr Yan, obviously Sean O'Malley, Aljamain Sterling, Marab. So I think that that's what made the division so exciting is because you had all of these really, really good competitors for a really long time fighting these really accomplished veterans, which I think was a really unique thing. So I think that that was kind of the layout for a little bit, but now I think that a lot of the cream is starting to rise to the top in the sense that a lot of us have fought each other and either lost or beaten each other, and or like winning streaks or on losing streaks now, and a lot of that is happening right now. So I think that it's gonna weave itself out a little bit. Like I know a couple weeks ago when Aldo fought that Martinez kid, I know that Martinez was someone that they were really trying to push there for a little bit, and then he lost. You know what I mean? So you're starting to see that like who's really like a top five guy and who's really not. And so I think that that's where the division is where it's sorting itself out more and more to where a lot of us are competing against each other. And in the next couple of years, it's definitely going to be really worked out. So that's where it is now. I think that Marab and O'Malley fight is a super interesting one. I really like both of their styles. I think that they're super unique and they're definitely like the fire to the water to each other. Marab is this very conditioned guy who's going to try to out wrestle and just make you tired and not necessarily like put a beating on you, but put a beating on you physically in the sense that he's going to exhaust you. And then you have Sean O'Malley who keeps a lot of space, wants to strike with you, and then definitely is super accurate and precise in the strikes that he throws, and he throws them really hard. So I think both of them have a really pain in the ass of like training camps ahead of them. Their weaknesses potentially line up pretty well with each other where Marab he's not very good
Yeah.
at closing that space on people. And then you have O'Malley who I think, definitely doesn't have many wrestling accolades. That doesn't mean that he can't wrestle, but definitely is not as good of a
Yeah.
wrestler as Rob. So their weaknesses kind of line up very perfectly together. And that's always a really interesting one because you never really know how those ones are going to go.
Yeah, the weaknesses definitely define each other. Um, so, I mean, what do you think about Marab and Sean O'Malley? Going at it, I guess you just answered that question. I guess I mean to say, you got this fight with Umar coming up, and Umar is another tough guy, another up close tough guy. What's your take going into this fight?
Yeah, so I mean, Umar's definitely way down in the rankings, but he is 5-0 in the UFC right now. So he's doing really well. That's a question that you asked, right? Because you kind of cut
Yep,
out a little
yep.
bit.
But
Yeah, okay, okay,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, so Umar's doing really well in the UFC. Obviously, he's 5-0. Apparently, no one will take fights against him. And it's a guy that they really want to push. Him just having the Dagestani Russian fan base, which is a really big one now in the UFC, as they've been doing really well recently. Um, Undefeated guy, the cousin of Khabib Nurmagomedov, who's considered one of the greatest of all time. So Umar is definitely a really tough challenge. there's a lot of question marks around Umar still, just being that he hasn't fought like some top level fighters before. But I think he's good. I think he's going to be a pain in the ass to fight. I think that I get to highlight a lot of the things that people don't know that I do well. In specific, like the wrestling and grappling piece of my game is something that not a lot of people have seen. And so yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to flying over to Abu Dhabi and doing it in his backyard, more or less. But I fought there twice before already, and the fans have always been really kind and really cool out there to me. So I don't anticipate it being like an American audience where I'm going to get booed like crazy, just because I think that that's not something that they do in Abu Dhabi as much, or at least in my experience. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. And then I'm gonna see the Middle East a little bit. The last couple times was during COVID, so I didn't really leave the hotel at all. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time hanging out in the Middle East and kind of seeing what that's about. So yeah, I'm real excited, man.
Very good. Hey, I saw a little post from you, and it was the Silver Surfer, and the quote on it in the little caption of the Silver Surfer was saying, "If we turn from battle because there is little hope of victory, where then would valor be? Let it ever be the goal that stirs us, not the odds."
Mm.
So, what's the goal? You know, taking a fight like this, which I guess from my understanding is this guy's up and coming. Like, why would you do this? You're number 2 ranked. Like, but what is your ultimate goal? Like, because you're ready to go against the odds, but what is the ultimate goal for the Sandman?
The ultimate goal is I want to be a fighter that no one has ever seen before. And what I mean by that is I want to do things differently, but I want to do them like futuristically. Like I want my style to be the style that people that is like the set blueprint of how to win in like 10, 15 years. So I'm really like searching
Wow.
for that like holy grail of like style. You know what I mean? Like I think that if you look at war and you look at battle, it's not necessarily like it's a little bit of the general that heads it and having good strategy and all of that, but it's about who has better weapons. And I think that styles are your weapons. And if you have a style that is just more modern and more put together and suitable for all environments, then you're going to win more often than not, especially in one-on-one combat. So I'm really trying to seek out like that style that's in the future 10, 15 years where people look back and they're like, "Oh, okay, this is how you win fights. This is exactly how you do it. This is the blueprint. This is the architectural design of how you actually win a fight." Because, like anyone that I think is on this path of truth or this path of, enlightenment, dare I say, is I think like seeking that like that the one rule, and a lot of like religious texts have it be love, and so I'm looking for the love of fighting in the sense that I want to figure out what it is that is this thing's heartbeat so that I can give it back to people and they can look at a style and just be like, all right, I'm just going to emulate that because that won all of the time. So I'm on my way. I don't know. I think that I gotta, it's going to take a few lifetimes to do. So I definitely won't be able to accomplish it in my career, but I got, I think 5 or 6 more years in me. So I'll have that amount of time to hopefully get kind of close.
Yeah, when I see your style, Corey, you speak about your style and the uniqueness of it. You got such a fluid style that when I look at, you have great progression with your strikes, but you do something that I don't see a lot of people do. You make a lot of reads on the fly. You kind of flush them out to see what they're going to do, and you just find it. You find the combination, you find the strike, you find the movement, you find the angle, and you slide so well. You do so well sliding. And it reminded me, I didn't know, I seen you working with Trevor Whitman. And, when I see your style, I'm like, that I see a lot of, a lot of similarities in the way that, I used to train over there with Trevor. And I see a lot of things that you do that, he taught me to do and showed me to do. I'm not sure that's where you got it from, but I mean, I see you guys working together. So I'm just imagining what skill jump or what download you're going to have when the two of you get together and start putting more of that style on paper or just in cage.
Yeah, so I did most of my training with a guy named Christian Allen, who I attribute a lot of my success to, and my like viewpoints on martial arts to. But now I'm working a lot with Trevor right now, which is great. Christian used to train under Trevor a little bit too, and yeah, so Trevor's a really precise guy. Trevor's like he uses really good cues. He definitely has like a whole dictionary of techniques and things to use, and then also conceptual ideas too. But he's really precise. So working with Trevor recently, I feel like I'm going to be able to make my game super precise, especially in the striking, being that I do flow and I do I move super well, and I typically make pretty good decisions when I'm striking. But I think a piece that I've really been missing is being able to like really throw some power into some stuff. In the past, I've always done that with elbows and knees, just because those are the pointier pieces of our body and easier to drive a lot of energy through people and hurt people with. But now I'm learning how to do that with my kicks and my punches too. So I think it's going to be really, really good, man. Like I'm adding a lot of power into my shots, and that's really exciting because I can flow, and now I can crash too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You talked about it earlier. It's just about how just the training, what it does to your body on a physical level. What is your recovery like? What do you do to recover? What is it like for you to have those sparring days and then recover the next day just to kind of do one of those same workouts? How do you recover?
Yeah, I mean, there is no recovering fully, but I, I, I
Yeah.
definitely eat real good. I try to do all the things that people tell me to do. Like do the ice bath. I do that twice a week. I do the sauna once a week. I do these breathing exercises for about 15 minutes. That brings my nervous system down, which kind of lets myself not be so tense after a late workout. I do those almost every day. After like a hard session, I do my breathing exercises to calm my nervous system. I work with a company called Chirp, so I do like that. Like they have like electric foam rollers and just recovery stuff. So I use a lot of their stuff, which is super awesome. Um, Obviously, nutrition is really helpful too. Like I eat real good. I stay away from sugar. I use all of my Umbo supplements and all of my functional mushrooms, and yeah, I just stay on top of my nutrition. I stay on top of myself physically, and I try to do what they say, but I still can't not feel like I got hit by a car every single week. So I think that there's not getting around it, but it could be worse if I wasn't doing all that stuff, I think.
Yeah, real quick, what I do that usually helps me out when I'm training like that, my body feels sore. So like on the weightlifting days is one thing that's more just like a matter of stretching, but on the spar days where you kind of feel like you got hit by a car, what I do is the the day I spar, I take like 2.5 milligrams of psilocybin along with like lion's mane and cordyceps, and the next day I feel like brand new again. And it just
Wow.
it I don't yeah the I don't know what it is, like a combination with the psilocybin, whatever. It just kind of brings down the inflammation in my body, and it just it I feel brand new, like I didn't even spar. That's how well it works for me.
Wow, really? Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, because it has to be a little bit more than a microdose that I use, and it kind of just it because you I get that vibrating feeling that happens when you get on that nice little dose, and that kind of rehabs the body a lot. But like you said, there's it's really hard to make sure that you are recovering and getting in your body what you need to get in your body, because with the drug testing and everything that you got to be ready for. If you just take one bad supplement, the next thing you know, you can be brought in question and ruin everything that you've been training for.
Definitely. Yeah, I have a buddy who does that as well, and he says that it's real good for like when he gets hit real good and gets a little bit rocked or concussed. He says he does the same thing, and it helps him a lot too.
You're talking, in camp right now. You're obviously extremely busy. You're in pain as that your mind and body will get used to that as you go, because you kind of you've been rehabbing. But who helps you? Do you have people helping you set those times to eat, amount of calories, do this, do that, take this, take that. Do you have anybody doing that? Because I saw another little bit on you, a little post where you talked about efficiency and the fact that hard work can be like, okay, great, the hardest worker always wins. No, it's the one who works the most efficiently. So how have you learned those skills, or someone there to help you with that as far as planning and being efficient with this small amount of time we all have in a day?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I work with a nutritionist who I don't know what it is. I feel like when I'm outside of camp, I eat almost the exact same things. But when I work with her, I just like feel way better. I don't know what it is or what it is that she's doing. But yeah, so I work with a nutritionist. So I do that. I see a physical therapist at a place down here in Castle Rock called Rock Solid Sports Recovery. I see them. I see my friend Meg Farrell, who's a really good body worker as well. So yeah, so I got like a little team of people that help more than definitely more than I think most people. But I've been in the Denver area for a really long time, and I've gotten to cross paths with a lot of people that are really good at what they do. And so yeah, so those three people are the people that I use most.
Talk about that Denver training scene because I was there back in the old school when it was Grudge and Nate Marquardt and Shane Carwin and Elliot Marshall and Donnie Brook and all those guys used to be my training partners. What is the training scene like now? I know my old teammate from the Black Zillions, Carrington Banks, is in your camp and helps you out quite a bit. But it's such a great group of people that I swear Denver people are like really good down to earth people, and it seems like you guys got such a great training atmosphere down there.
Yeah, we do. So the team kind of went through a little bit of changes recently. So now our team isn't, or I don't know. So there was a bit of a split in the gym, a little bit, not to get into it too much, but the new team name that's at High Altitude Martial Arts now is called Forged Fight Team. So it's pretty much almost all of the entire same guys except just under a new name. Carrington Banks is a really big piece of the team. He's my wrestling coach, the wrestling coach for the guys on the team. There's Cody Donnybrook, who you were saying, who I know was a training partner of yours. There's also Vinny Lopez, who I think was also a training partner of yours.
Vinny. Yeah.
Yeah, so those two guys, a couple of jiu-jitsu coaches, Valor and Jared McCluskey are also part of that, and then another striking coach named Mike. So we have a lot of coaches on the team. I help out here and there, obviously, when I can with the guys that I can without spreading myself too thin. But yeah, it's real good. I mean, the air is really high, so whenever I go down in elevation, I feel like like my lungs are never an issue. It's other things that make me tired, but it's not usually like the amount of lung space that I got. So that's really awesome. We obviously have really good just nature stuff here, so it kind of encourages a healthy lifestyle a little bit. Like people come to Denver, I think, or not maybe Denver, but they leave from Denver to go hiking and places and do all of that. And so it's kind of just like a nice environment if you're interested in just being healthy and all of that. And then with the air, that really helps with the fights. And so, yeah, so it's a real good team, man. We're I think, going to do really well. There's some big fights in the UFC happening in the next couple of years for all of us. And I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to say that that team might have a couple belts here in a couple of years. And that'll be really cool.
What sort of advantage do you have? I mean, you speak of the air and the elevation, and then also I know you love nature, love the solitude that it brings you and the peace of mind. But what sort of advantage does that bring when you're going into the fight and when you're in the middle of it? As you know, it's a lot of exertion to go out there one on one.
I think that the advantage is kind of sizable, I suppose. I do know that so I go train in Virginia a decent amount and then sometimes New Orleans to train with a couple buddies of mine. And so I know when I go there, I don't really get tired. Like I get tired like muscularly, like my muscles fatigue, but I like recover really quick. And like I said, I just have like more lung space. So I think it's a pretty sizable one. I definitely know when I go down and fight in a Florida or a California or anywhere that's, close to sea level, I definitely feel like some pretty significant like uh, like physical benefits. Definitely.
Yeah, that's got to be part of your game plan too. I mean, understanding the fact that you have that ability to go in deep waters and be able to push a pace at deep waters, knowing that you can recover real fast. You know, when I trained in Denver, when I trained in Albuquerque, it always gave me that little extra, that extra boost to be like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm good. But it's funny because I will be training in Albuquerque and in Colorado, and then I'll go up a flight of steps, and then I'll like get a little winded. I'm just like, wait a minute, I should be in better shape than this.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a thing. Like the air is definitely thin here, so.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. So you know, you you have such an amazing mindset, such an amazing style, uh, and you help out the next generation. What are the things that you do specifically that separates you from everybody else? That grind that you do, because I tell my guys, I'm like, listen, you can go into the team practice and that's fine. You'll get better doing a team practice, but you really become great for what you do on your own. That's when the greatness sets in. That's when that black mamba mentality kicks in. It's the work you do when you're by yourself. It's the work you do when there's no one cheering you on. What is your routine to help you become that great?
Yeah, so I think so. There's a writer that I really like. His name's Frank Herbert. He wrote the story Dune, the sci-fi novel, like in the '70s. But so Frank has this other book that I'm reading right now, and he talks about trying to analyze his own work and trying to help people understand how to write for themselves. And in it, he says the only thing that I've learned about teaching people how to write is that I cannot teach them to write. All I can do is teach them what connects, what type of plumbing connects, what type of pipe connects to what type of connector, and I can teach them the process of connecting all of those things. But the writing itself, people have to learn on their own. And I think that like this is why I kind of get a little bit annoyed when people like highlight hard work a little bit too much, because I know that they're speaking like the physical hard work and they're going to practices and stuff, but really the hard work is the work that you put in trying to figure it out, trying to figure out what it is that you're messing up every day. And and just like the thinking piece of things like that stuff is way harder to figure out than I think going and doing like a really hard exercise. Like I know I can do that. Like I can feel like I can get hit by a car every day, no problem, if that means being a world champion. Like that's not really the hard part. The hard part is you have to learn how to fight for yourself. And that's something that takes a lot of time outside the gym thinking about it. It means honing in on your awareness around what you are and who you are and what you stand for. And fighting, I think, is not just this thing that I do. Like fighting is the reason that I think I'm here for at least like this portion of my life. And I treat it as such. Like I treat my life like it's a fight. Like most of the things that I feel like the deep down things that I feel like I know about life, I've learned from like the process of learning how to fight and what all of that means. And so they're not separate, especially when you're talking like world's best. I think that they're not separate, and you can't treat them like they're separate. So I guess if I had any advice to give to anyone about being a good fighter, it's that it doesn't, like, you don't get to work out for 2 hours and then say that you're going to be a world champion one day. You have to work out for 2 hours and then take that stuff all the way back home with you, do a lot of problem solving on your own, which is going to require a ton of frustration. And it's going to be a slow, long process. And if you're not willing to do it, you're going to get beat by guys like me that are willing to do it.
So we got just a little time left here. I want to know, like pre-fight, right before the fight or right the day of, what are you eating? How you feeling? Maybe what we might hear you come out to, what music, and then when you're done with that fight, what a relief. What's the thing you like to do the most?
Yeah. So I mean, we weigh in 36 hours before, so I'm not eating anything until then. But afterwards, it's just a ton of rice, potatoes, and meat, and then like berries and a lot of like rehydration stuff like that. That pretty much lasts all the way until a couple hours before the fight, and then it's fight time. Just put myself, like I said, into that Zen space. But a zen space where I get to allow which things are helpful. And in the circumstance of fighting, it's a lot of things like beat this guy's ass are a lot of the helpful thoughts that I let come into my head. So it's a lot of that. After I'm usually pretty tired. For some reason, I'm not hungry for about a day after a fight. I think because all the adrenaline and just all of the the hormones and chemicals and stuff that are pumping through me that my body gave me to make it through the fight. So I don't do a ton of eating like crazy until maybe like a few days later. I feel like my stomach can start to handle it, um, but yeah, that's about it. I don't really celebrate. Maybe I should celebrate a little bit more, but I'm kind of, I feel like a little bit too old now to celebrate. I'm 32 now, so I don't really like. I'm married, so I don't have any reason to be out really. Uh, yeah, I just kind of take my time off. I enjoy just laying in bed and waking up not sore for a couple weeks, and then I kind of just get back to training again.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, man. It's so much of the fight game is mental. So much of the fight game is not about the other person, but about yourself and what you're gonna do. You know, a lot of times I feel like as an athlete, we focus too much on what your opponent is gonna do, but the criteria for winning a fight is is you being able to impose your will on that person. So it's more or less about what you do. And, it was in my career when I realized that I was the biggest challenge, I was the biggest opponent that I needed to defeat every single time. Fighting became different because before then it was a bit of a struggle sometimes. Like I enjoy the fight, I enjoy it when it happened, but sometimes the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen would get the better of me. And it wasn't until I realized that that was the part that kept calling me back. That was the part that, you know what I'm saying, at 40 something years old, say, hey, I want to do it again because it's a sick ride. It's one of those rides where it's just like I hate to be on it, but I love it so much I can't get off of it. You know what I'm saying? So it's a crazy dynamic, and it's very interesting to see how you explain it and your thought process in the whole thing.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like a crucible, man. Like I wouldn't be who I am right now if it wasn't for all of the fights that I had. So, uh, yeah, it's real deep, man. Like it's real deep. Like fighting is real deep to me. I just learned so much, and I learned how to deal with those anxieties that you're talking about, and I just wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for it. So,
Absolutely. Well, Corey, I know you got a busy schedule ahead of you. I just want to thank you for your time and wish you the best coming up in August and wish you a very blessed and safe training camp for myself and Jake Plummer. Jake, you got anything you want to close out with?
Just always a pleasure to hear you speak, Corey. Excited to watch you fight and here to support you in any way we can, man. And thanks for joining Sugar Snakes Takes today.
cool. Right on. Thank you guys for having me. See you guys later.
Peace,
All right.
love, and umbo mushrooms.
Peace.